Bakersfield has an appeal. It has a unique draw because it is so connected from a community perspective. It's very widespread, and so it still has that city vibe with a small town feel.
You just heard Heather Laganelli, Locale Farm to Table. Heather grew up on the East Coast but moved to Bakersfield in 2003 and has become a huge fan and proponent of Bakersfield. She founded Locale Farm to Table in 2015 and focuses on using sustainable organic ingredients in the menu. She is a board member for Bakersfield Hub and is the chair for their Innovation Lab project. And she is a board member for our upcoming Restaurant Week event that is going to take place in January of 2022. In her spare time, she loves working with photography, art designs, and blogging. She truly has boundless energy. I don't think a podcast can do enough to truly express how much passion Heather has for Bakersfield, for her restaurant, and how much creativity she has in her soul. So, I highly recommend that you visit the restaurant and get to know her. You foodies and artists out there are going to love her and the food they produce. Stay tuned to hear from Heather. I think you'll really enjoy getting to know more about her.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the show today. I am John Duffield, CPA, and I'm your host today. Before we get into today's episode, I would like to encourage our followers to check out our previous episode with Donnie Youngblood. And I would like to also encourage them to check out our website at our2centspodcast.com and sign up for our monthly newsletter. By doing so, you'll be kept up to date as to when new episodes are released, and then you'll also be provided with our other content as well. So I think it's a great resource. Heather, I am really excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, it's been fun. We've been talking about 5 or 6 minutes. We've already been all over the board, and we're wasting all this valuable content about stuff, right?
It's always the off-air things that get people. And I tell people all the time when we do interviews, we need to turn the mic on when we're just chatting, because it's so organic.
Yeah, it's interesting. Me being the nerd accountant that I am, I tend to have notes, and I always, life gets all planned out, right? I've got these notes, and hey, we're going to go through these steps and things like that.
It worked for you, though. This is how you ended up where you are today, right?
I guess, right? Yeah, by accident or something. But it's funny when I talk to the other guys, like they're always very critical of me because they always say, hey, Duffield, if you'll just freelance it and just kind of just be you and just have the conversation, it's a lot better when you do it
Someday,
that way. So.
This could be a New Year's resolution. I don't know, in the works right there.
Right. So you're the owner of Locale Farm to Table Restaurant. Tell me about that restaurant and what you do. Obviously, It's a restaurant, but give me the story.
So we locally source our ingredients, and if we can't find it locally, then we buy organic as well. Sustainable or organic is our preference for our ingredients, and local is our first preference. So we kind of have a little pecking order. We go to the farmer's market, we partner with local artisans, and we try to figure out ways to provide the best quality ingredients as possible.
Does that make it difficult to be able to do that and operate that? Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
That's why a lot of people don't do it, because it does take a lot more energy. I mean, having friendships, having relationships with family members, that all takes work, right? So when you add in vendors, community partners, when you add in farmers, when you add in people of all different types of demographics and backgrounds, it creates a really unique experience.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I work with, hundreds or thousands of clients or business clients. And, you see business owners from time going that extra mile or going a different direction. They have some unique twist, that they're doing for their business to serve people, right? And you are. And so you're putting your own unique twist on that fresh local food. And then what's that look like for you?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I was talking to my life coach the other day, and I was telling her, I'm trying to pinpoint when I decided I needed to be different in my life. Like, what age was I? And so I started.
Okay, so answer the question now that we're having the conversation.
So it was very difficult for me to think back, but I remember I was taking an art class, Worcester, Massachusetts, where I'm from. And it was at the Worcester Art Museum, and I was tasked with making a puppet. And I remember looking around at all the kids to see what they were doing, and I was like, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that. And so my brain started to think okay, what should I do? I should do something that none of these people are doing. And then it just kind of spiraled from there, and that was at the age of 6 or 7.
Well, it's good. It honestly is. But, and by the way, I would have been the kid that would have gone way off track, right? It ended up with something really stupid to then lift my head up and go that, I didn't even do a puppet. I was doing something entirely different, right?
No, but that's another form of creativity too, right?
Yeah, it really is.
And I think that's a talent that is kind of fallen by the wayside in our school system these days, because a lot of children aren't exposed to the arts. Like for me, I was really blessed my mom put me in a magnet school. And so we had a high math, science, art. There was even the first week of school. I remember we went on field trips every day for the week because the school was still in its building phases. And some of those field trips changed my life. We went to this Acton Science Center. It was kind of like a discovery center in Massachusetts. And they had this pool table that was suspended from the ceiling with cables. And then you got a color marker, big ones, and they put an arm down in the center of the table. And then you were able to move the table however you saw fit. And it would create a repetitive art motion.
Oh, I get you. Art in motion. Yeah.
And then you get to take that with you. And it just kind of rocked my world. I feel like
they were using a pool table for that?
Yeah, they just took the legs off the pool table, suspended it from the ceiling, and then had this little retractable arm that went in the center. Well, that's
going a lot of effort. They could do that a lot of different ways than having to use a pool table for that, right?
They could do it anyway, yeah. But I think as far as making an impact and walking into a room and seeing this like grand oak table.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was neat.
I wasn't going to go this direction yet, but I have to because I know you did grow up on the East Coast, and I know that you went to college to study art, right?
Yes.
And then I look at a lot of the things that you've done, and there's obviously a huge artistic slant to a lot of what you have done or do every single day. Well, how or why the restaurant?
So I wanted to have a platform where I could showcase what I was capable of. And it kind of fell into my lap. It wasn't something that I ever planned on doing. As you know, the restaurant industry is not an easy industry. Sure. And it's kind of laughable, as far as
laughable. Why laughable?
Because it's difficult. It's so intense and difficult that it's comical to me, because a lot of people do choose to go into that industry, but that's not something that I would have ever really thought I would be doing in my life. I had dreams of owning a restaurant, but it was never something that I would have thought I would have owned for as long. Maybe like 2 or 3 years, try it out, make an impact, sell it, move on.
Yeah, well, so based on what I know about you, and I don't know everything, but you definitely have that creative slant to you, and you have that entrepreneurial slant to you, where you like going out and trying some different things. And I think you certainly can do that in a restaurant, right? Because you have freedom in the menu.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think too, from an exposure perspective, it's really being involved in a restaurant in a community like ours. It takes a certain type of individual, but it also lends itself to a multitude of connections. Like from a networking perspective, I wouldn't have met half the people that I've met if I didn't have an opportunity like this. And so I really look back and think this is a blessing. And I do feel like I'm in the right place at the right time in the right city. I don't really have any reason to be in Bakersfield. And I've spoken a few times for public engagements, and it always makes me kind of chuckle because I don't have any real reason to live in Bakersfield. I don't have any community ties besides just my restaurant. And I have friends and family that have impacted me, friends that are like family. My brother moved out here about 7 years ago because I was living in Bakersfield. And I don't know, I think of all the places I could live in the world, and I would have never have imagined that I would end up here.
End up here, yeah. So let me tell you my quick little restaurant story, by the way, and so you'll laugh at this.
Yeah, let's do it.
This is my perspective as opposed to your perspective. So when I was in high school, being the delinquent that I was, my mom decided that I needed to get a job of some sort. Right?
Okay.
Right. Trust me. Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
The prepared note guy is telling me he's the CPA.
Well, there's something for all of us, right? And so, anyways, at the time, the only place that was hiring in my local community of Arvin, California, was an A&W Root Beer, little restaurant. That's a fast food restaurant, right? So they gave me a job as a fry cook, and so like day one, and I think I was in junior high, if I remember right. Not very old, but I'm in junior high, and I loved that job.
That's really impressive that you love that job, because that's a difficult job.
Loved that job. Okay.
What did you like about it?
Busy.
Yeah.
Just busy. It just was nonstop, on your feet all the time, busy, right?
You don't even realize the time's over. Your shift ends and you look at the clock, and it's astonishing.
It's just busy. And it wasn't this high level, got creativity, right? I'm cooking a fried burrito or some French fries or something like that.
You have to be quick on your feet. You have to be able to think and multitask and
absolutely.
Get along with all different walks of life. That's the really intriguing part of the restaurant industry too.
Yeah. So I liked it. So after that, worked a couple of jobs in the shed out, in Arvin and in the fields and whatever. And so then one of my best friends got a job at Denny's restaurant and then asked me to go work with him at Denny's restaurant. And
Real doing.
Right. And I ended up cooking at Denny's restaurant, which was out at the Grapevine at the time.
Okay.
And so I drove out there every day and did that. And for the record, I love to cook. I really do. And I'm good at it because I understand temperatures and times, right?
Right.
When things come on and off. That's
the planning side of you.
Yeah,
yes.
that's the key. But this is the reality about me. One of my oddball passions has always been own a restaurant. But Heather, it would be a franchise or something that I had no creativity in. And I'm perfectly happy with that, right? Now, I like staying busy. And I'm happy to work like crazy, and that part. But I don't need to envision the menu. Whereas you have developed an amazing menu.
And it's interesting you say that because the menu part, the development part is pretty labor intensive, but it fills that creative need.
Sure.
And the thought of owning a franchise, knowing the work that goes into running a restaurant, I've dabbled in it and we've gotten a lot of requests every day, at least at some point throughout the day, somebody will say, hey, do you think you could open up a location in Sacramento? Hey, do you think you can open up a location in Vegas? Do you think you can open up a location in LA? Or we'll get different requests for different cities or states. And I've looked into it. I feel like there would be some value. Have you ever seen the McDonald's, the founder?
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, owning property in different locations and
Sure.
building an empire, if you will.
Well, the key is having the right model, right?
Right.
And then systematizing that model so that somebody can repeat it substantially, maybe not completely, but substantially, and then being able to communicate and train and, help that individual do it. If it's not for you, then selling somebody else a franchise and then you training them and teaching them and helping them be successful on their own. So they keep paying you franchise fees, right?
I like both of them. I like how both of them sound. And the franchise fee is a little bit, I think it's like $150,000 to just start that process. But I think a lot of the funding...
Oh, attorney's fees and things in that, yeah.
Just to apply for your franchisee licensing, I think it was $150,000. And then I think some of the funds that would play into effect would be monetizing that system and coming up with that process where you have to custom make certain pieces. Because for me, like we serve our food on boards and those boards are kind of eclectic and kind of kitschy. I find them in San Francisco or I'll find them in LA or here and there I'll get 20, and so having somebody custom make pieces like on a larger scale for something, if there were 10 franchises, say, would be some of the challenges.
Yeah, that's the interesting part about it for you. You have such that creativity and that niche-y, involvement in it that aspect of it becomes difficult to franchise to some respects. Right?
But I think it would be possible.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that you bought the restaurant and then changed the format. Tell me about that.
So like I said, this kind of fell into my lap. I wasn't intending.
What were you doing at the time?
So I was working as an event coordinator. I did a lot with the wedding industry.
Okay.
And I was given an opportunity to buy Wine Me Up a while back before, I think it was the owner before the one that's there now owned it. And it was because I thought owning a wine bar would be a better alternative than owning a restaurant.
Why?
Because I'm passionate about wine.
Okay.
And I'm like a fancy person. I don't really even eat sandwiches. That's something that most people don't know about me. I don't even eat sandwiches. And I own a restaurant that sells sandwiches. And so it's a little off the cuff, but a wine bar to me is right up my alley. So cute, bougie food that tastes great, or gourmet, small bites, tapas style, pairing things, beer, wine, champagne to accentuate the flavor of the wine or to offset it and accentuate the flavor of the food. That's kind of my forte. And so having a casual dining establishment is a little bit different than what I had originally anticipated. But the deal fell through when I was working with a broker on the wine bar. Ended up getting an offer for Union Station Deli at the time. And the previous owner had been in business for 10 years. And she had built a pretty good, substantial business for herself within that time frame. And I figured, you know what, worst case, I just morph it into that wine concept that I want. And I really loved the location. And I liked that it wasn't part of a strip mall and it had character. And so that's kind of how that started. And so day one, I got the key. We closed escrow and I remember getting the key to somebody else's like heart and soul and dream business. And I really didn't have any interest in keeping that business. And I told her that from the beginning. So it was a little disheartening, you know,
for her.
For both of us, because I could see her passion. She cared so much about what she did, and she was on the brink of retirement. Her and her husband were going to move to North Dakota, and so it was interesting because I saw her about a year later. She came in to check on me, and She looked 10 years younger.
Really?
Yeah, the restaurant industry, man, it's no joke.
I need to do that. Yeah, anything I can to look younger.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. But yeah, so she poured her heart into that business, and she did stay around for a little bit and kind of teach me some of the things that she learned over the years. And I found that it was a little difficult for her to be there because her customers, she had such a strong connection with her customer base that they were heartbroken to see her go. And then here I am, this little kid, like this was 6 years ago. I mean, standing next to her, she's in her mid 60s, and I'm over here talking about chimichurri and aioli and sauces and seasoning and flair. And they're like, I just want meat and bread, no salt, no pepper. So
Right.
it's very different demographic.
Right. So a long time ago, I actually worked in the business brokerage industry.
Okay.
Okay. You know, somebody would say, hey, we want to sell our business.
Yeah.
And so I worked in that side. It's interesting to see they're pricing that business based on, you know, what it had been doing or what it has, right? Based
Right.
on that Union Deli. And then you came in and ripped everything out and changed it essentially,
And
right?
it was interesting because I worked with Sunbelt Realty and John Willingham and Russ, and they were great. They were great. And I remember them telling me, you know, you could do this, you could do that, because they knew that I didn't want to own a deli, or especially a restaurant. That wasn't part of my goal. So they saw the vision with me as well. And that was part of the selling point. And Vicky Wood, she was ready to move on. She was ready like 6 months prior. So she was ready to just
Sounds like she was
away.
tired in
She
some respects.
was,
Yeah, she
yeah.
was overworked and tired.
And her husband was already in North Dakota, so she didn't have that much support. So I think it was a good fit.
Yeah, so I always like having the business part of the conversation when we're doing these. So you bought a business from somebody else and then changed it. So what advice would you give me or our listeners on buying that business? What did you do wrong, or what would you do differently?
That's a great question. So I remember when we first were in negotiations, the business owner was saying, you know, we talked to the employees and they're all going to stay and they're excited. They already know about you. I've given them all this information and they can't wait to work with you. And in theory, that sounds great.
Right.
But in actuality, it didn't go as poorly as it could have. Their main cook quit right before the business closed, right before the deal closed, escrow closed. And the other 3 employees stayed on, and they had a really hard time with changing the way that they did things. So I think anticipating that the staff was not going to stay would have been a stronger move for me. I had a feeling.
You have to clean house and get rid of them, you think?
Well, I didn't necessarily want to clean house and get rid of them. I did want to give them the opportunity to stick it out if they could, but their vision and their goals and their flow and their routine, it was so severely impacted because, like I said, I didn't want to keep the menu. And so even by me just implementing one new thing a week, it really ruffled the feathers.
Sure.
And people make the business, right? So if you're working with people that don't see your vision, even though they think they might enjoy it in the long term, in that transition process, it's a little bit different, you know, from a change perspective.
That's change. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't like change, and it's up to you to create that vision and sell that vision, right? Passionately, so that they're all willing to kind of get on board and go with it. That's tough.
And I did end up retaining most of their employees, like I said, but in the long run, I remember, I'll never forget one of the girls that quit. She was crying. And she's like, I just love everything you do and who you are and all the things, but I can't work here. And I'm like, that's fine. I don't want you to be somewhere that you don't want to be. This was year 1. She just didn't want to let me down. It was so refreshing to see that she was passionate about it, but it was just not what she had originally signed up for.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. But I really thought that having the people come, the standing business with the customer base existing, was a good edge up for starting a business, because I would have had to have at least 6 to 7 months worth of money saved in the bank in order to cover the first, you know, even maybe a year's worth of monthly
Working
operating.
capital,
Yes.
right? Yes, for sure.
Yes. And so there was a little bit of a workaround there. So I didn't have to have quite as much money in my pocket to start off that business, which I had taken all of the money that I had ever earned to buy it in the first place. So I was in a little bit of a bind there as far as that goes.
Yep. Everybody always says that the restaurant business is so hard, and yet it's the one you decided to tackle. So tell me, is that rumor true? That it is that hard?
Yeah, I told you earlier. Yes, it's harder than you would even have imagined. Like when people say it's hard, it's harder.
What's so hard about it?
Okay, so we're only open for lunch. We're open Monday through Friday from 10 to 3. So the first person
That's
gets...
not hard.
Oh, I know. It sounds so easy.
Right.
It's a little cute restaurant. No big deal. The first person gets there at 7:15, 7:30, depending. And then the last person usually leaves around 5:30. So when you think of operating hours, that's a 5-hour operating window. It's really, it's requiring some 8-hour shifts
Sure.
from quite a few people. And
Food prep and things of that
and
nature.
even just keeping up with the cleaning and all of the things that you don't anticipate in your day. Like today we got 2 requests for catering orders that were relatively large, and building out menus for that and coming up with quotes for that, or just things that happen on the fly that you can't anticipate. And so the regular day-to-day takes up a good chunk of that, but then there's also other factors, especially if you're doing multiple platforms of service. So we do delivery, catering, takeout, dine-in, and then we do a lot of private parties, nonprofit events. We do evening events. I just hired a new chef. He worked for the Padre for a while, and he worked at the Hensers for a little bit as well. And I told him he was going to have to earn his keep a little bit, because even though we are open for lunch, my goal is to engage in the community and get people excited about what we're doing, and try to give back as much as we possibly can by doing night events and creative events that are intriguing outside of just like a lunch service. And so this month we have 3 of those events planned, which is more than we've done in a while.
On your property?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about that. That's interesting.
So about 2 weeks ago, we had one. We partnered with Nell Cordant, which is a winery out in Paso.
Okay.
And so we did small bites. We did a prefix menu. So it was 4 courses. And we had the wine. We had somebody come out from the winery to speak about each wine. And then we paired each wine with a custom, unique concept. So like the last one was a eclectic cannoli. And so growing up on the East Coast, cannolis were my jam, right? But instead of doing a traditional cannoli, which we could have easily done and people would have still been blown away by it, because there isn't a lot of cannolis in Bakersfield that are traditional.
Right.
I decided to do a kind of like a candy shell and turn it into the cannoli shell. So it almost had like a brittle crunch vibe. And then we took goat cheese, which is not common, ricotta or rigot, if I was on the East Coast, and lemon curd, which is my favorite. And we did a mixed berry compote, and so we coated the ends with toasted almonds.
Wow.
And so it was just a really different concept, and it was very unique, but it still had the same elements of that cannoli. And we paired it with one of their red wines that are a little bit more rich. It's called their Bedlam, and people went crazy.
I'm assuming they did, right?
Yeah,
It
they
sounds
went
fantastic.
crazy.
It sounds like a great experience. How are you marketing or advertising that? How do people know about that?
Yeah, so we do put it on our Instagram and on our Facebook, and then we usually will tell our customers as well. Sometimes we'll put up a sign saying that we have an event coming up. We just posted on Instagram last week with our upcoming events for the month, so people can plan for that.
Yeah. Did you guys do that outside on patio style, or was it all in a restaurant?
So depending on the weather and the time of year, this time we divided it between the front dining room and the back dining room, just because it was a little bit warmer when we did it. It was almost 107 that day, so we wanted to
Keep
kind
them
of
cool.
offset that. Yeah.
Right.
But this next one will be at the end of the month, and the weather should be much cooler. When it gets nicer, we'll roll up our garage door in the back, and we have little Italian lights throughout our parking lot, so it kind of creates a nice little romantic vibe.
That's neat. That sounds like so much stinking fun. It really does. So
You'll have to come sometimes.
yeah, you know
Yeah.
what? No, I need to. I need to get out for the
Yeah.
record and go do that, and not. I live out at in the Rosedale area, kind of in the Palm and Allen area, if you will, and so. My wife loves to go out to dinner, and we always
Yeah.
stray kind of Friday, Saturday nights and do that. But we don't go too far always. You know what I mean? It's kind
I
of
get
in our
it.
little neighborhood.
When I travel, I get like that. I was reading some notes the other day because Olivia,
Yes.
she was telling me that there might be some random questions, and so I was looking for little tidbits, and I came across some of my travel notes, and one of the things that was on there was I don't really like to stray too far from my hotel for day trips. I would rather just stay near wherever I'm going to go, because there's something about that feeling of being 2 minutes from where you're going to sleep that is settling,
Yeah, comfort, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, and I like to explore, for the record. I really honestly do, but I don't always think in terms of, hey, I'm going to drive downtown and go do that, right?
Yeah.
But if it was a special event,
Right.
we certainly we wouldn't hesitate to do
Or
that.
maybe a little staycation at the Padre.
Right.
Right? You can like make it a whole thing.
Yeah, that'd be an easy sell, right?
Yeah.
So the pandemic was hard on some restaurant owners. What did you do did that have any impact on you? And what'd you do
No,
to pivot?
we weren't impacted at all. It was
Right.
super easy for us. It was
Right.
just a breeze.
You're so creative. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't make more money than you've ever made.
No, it was hard. It was hard. The challenge was not being able to gauge the flow of business. So leading up until the pandemic, we could always say, even in some of my notes, because I just found some journals when I first started the restaurant. Every day I would do like a daily log for 2-3 years. And it was constant, the same thing. Mondays and Thursdays were our busy days. Every Monday and Thursday would be packed. And then once the pandemic hit, our days shifted. So we never would know what days would be busy and what days would be slow.
Wow.
So that was a massive challenge for us.
Sure.
But some of the things that I did to help was I pretended that whatever was happening in LA or in San Francisco already happened here. And so my mindset was think bigger than what's happening in the immediate surrounding, and then think of how you would solve a problem if that was the problems that you were faced with.
Sure.
And so that was a way that I got a little bit of an edge up on the changing times. And then I just pretended like that was the way that it was. And I didn't ever really pay attention to the news to see if we were going to open back. I didn't rely on the hope of reopening. So I just pretended like this was what we're going to have to do. So how can I generate revenue and stay relevant and really connect with the community and provide hope for people? Because it was a pretty grim, dull time.
Yeah, sure. That absolutely it was. So no, that's fantastic. A little bit more on the restaurant. I notice you're hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that. What spots and what's that look like for somebody?
Yeah. So we're looking for, we've been really expanding on our catering side. And for a long time, we didn't have enough team members to do that. And so now that events are popping back up, we really need to be able to bring in either a sous chef or a line cook or somebody in the kitchen that has some experience and knowledge and how to work in a fast-paced environment that just has a good attitude and wants to be a part of something that's community-driven.
Sure. I'm a huge fan of Bakersfield and Kern County. I've lived here all my life. I told you I grew up in Arvin, California, right? And so didn't have the sense to leave for whatever reason, right? But you, on the other hand, are a transplant from the East Coast. So what's Bakersfield been like for you? Because we were talking about it earlier, that it's not something that you necessarily planned on being here, and it's not that Massachusetts.
For me, I love Bakersfield, and I think it's clear that anybody who follows me on social media knows that we did a mural actually at Mural Alley called Baker Dice. It was like #Baker Dice, which is blending Bakersfield and paradise.
Right.
And I think Bakersfield has an appeal. It has a unique draw because it is so connected from a community perspective. It's very widespread, and so it still has that city vibe with a small town feel. Even though I'm from the East Coast, I have a great appreciation for this community. But so I moved here right after college. I graduated from school in New Haven. I went to school at Albertus Magnus, which is a private school. And I lived out there for about a year and a half. I worked for a financial investment firm right out of college. I remember my first trip traveling to paid vacation. It was so exciting. I went to Dominican Republic. Haiti was under attack at the time. And the flight was $500, all inclusive, liquor, food, hotel.
Is that why you picked it? Right.
My friends and my family were like, Heather, you are crazy. Right. You're going to die. And I'm like, well, I'm going to die traveling well.
Right. And inexpensively, right?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Nobody else there.
No, it was pretty phenomenal.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so after working there for quite a bit of time, I was dating a guy that was from Bakersfield. Okay. And he had a brother that He was 9 years old at the time, and he was like, I just feel like I'm missing out on his upbringing, and I just really feel like he's such a big part of my life and who I am, and I don't want to miss that. And so I was like, I could live in California. That would be fun. Yeah. And I knew I had already visited Bakersfield in December of like the previous year, so I knew it wasn't like the typical concept of California as most people would think. Right. So I knew what I was getting myself into, and it grew on me. And I think that there's so much opportunity for business, for entrepreneurial minds. I think there's a huge potential for Bakersfield.
It's funny. I work with so many clients that come into Bakersfield from out of town. And so I might be sitting with a couple, and I always say, hey, welcome to Bakersfield. What do you think? Right. And I always ask that question. Almost everybody says, I'm really surprised. It's a great community. It's way better than we thought that it was going to be, right? The reputation it has, via the news media, whatever, it's just not anything like it. And so, I've only had one person in my career that just absolutely said, I just absolutely hate it.
Really?
Yeah, one. It was one of the wives. Her husband had been transferred here from, oil business, and they were coming from Denver, Colorado.
Oh, Denver's great too.
Yeah, and she just couldn't take it. And I think the backstory is she still had family in Denver.
Yeah.
Kind of kids were in Denver. And so
that was a hard adjustment for me because the people on the East Coast are so vibrant and fast paced, and the pace here is a lot slower than that.
Yep.
And so I found myself in the beginning having to remind myself to breathe
Right.
while I was having conversations with people, because I would just talk so quickly. And then also just not being around the food that I was accustomed to and the intensity of the type of people that live on the East Coast versus Bakersfield's very laid back. I like to tell this story. I was working for the newspaper. I was working for a woman named Louise, and I was in advertising and marketing, and it was Christmas time, and we were on like hard deadlines. And they were bringing in a lot of money during that time, and so a lot was riding on these deadlines. And I remember everybody was stressed out, and she was like, you know what, I'll be right back. She just gets up and leaves in the middle of all this craziness. No yelling, no nothing. She comes back with 3 different types of ice cream from Dewar's, hot fudge, sprinkles, all the toppings, like a whole ice cream sundae bar, and lays it out on the table. She's like, we're taking a Sunday break. And I look around and I think to myself, where am I? Like, what is this city that I am in? My boss didn't yell at anybody because she's stressed out. That's weird. And then she comes back with ice cream and tells everybody to take a break. Okay, right, I can handle this.
Right.
It's a good place to be.
Right, not used to it all.
Right.
Hey, I want to backtrack a little bit, because I was looking over my notes and I think I left something out that I wanted to talk about. The menu. Tell me about the menu. Let's go over that. What's the most popular thing you have on your menu?
I did every year I like to do a report where I come up with the top 10 items for the year.
Okay.
And so
this is based on sales that you have in the restaurant?
Yeah, based on sales.
Okay.
And so our number one selling item is a cold pressed juice that we make in-house, and it's locally sourced. So every season, the beauty of Bakersfield is that we get produce year round. I've lived in other cities besides Worcester where I grew up, and I've never lived in a city where that was true. And so Bakersfield is unique in that sense, right? So the drinks change. Every day it's something different, or maybe on a weekly basis it will change. And that has been our most popular item for the last couple of years now. It's really neat. Right now we're doing plums from Sweet Tree Farms, and then we have strawberries from the farmers market, which is L&E Berries. And then we did a mint reduction. And so we took that, like the mint flavor, added it to the strawberries, some lemon from Hopeful Harvest, and the plums. So it's very different. And then it will change depending on the season.
Heather, is that all you? Or
yeah.
Do you have, no, I'm asking, do you have other staff that are involved in that, or is that all you?
Okay, so I have yet to find somebody that has come to the restaurant and really given me a run for my money as far as the creative side goes.
Yeah, sure.
Every once in a while I'll come across that people have great ideas, and I think that's great. Like the guy that I'm working with right now, his name's Jason. He's very tactical, and he has tons of experience, and he can do like very interesting, ornate, unique things. He did Belvedere service for a while, which I love, the Belvedere at the Padre. He can do really fancy, crazy ideas. But as far as like the palate goes and just flavors and combining flavors, it takes a unique individual. And we've come across quite a few people over the years that have contributed, but 99% of the things on the menu
but nobody can beat you though.
I'm up for that challenge.
Right. Come on
I'm
down.
up for the challenge, yeah.
Right. No, I think that's awesome. I was looking over the menu and I was just like, there are so many amazing things that are on that menu.
The tri-tip melt is one that has stuck with us for quite some time, and that one is another popular item. The cowboy tacos or the cowboy salad are very, very popular. One of my favorites is the pastrami melt. We do a secret menu item. It's called our fig tartine. That's one of my favorite things. It's a French style crostini, so it's an open face concept, and it has goat cheese, it has prosciutto, it has a balsamic reduction, which everybody knows that works with me. I'm obsessed with balsamic reduction.
I love balsamics.
I do. And it has arugula, pine nuts, caramelized onions, and a little bit of local olive oil and some sea salt and a little bit of blue cheese crumbles. So the two cheese together is a little bit different, but works really well. And then a fig butter that we make in-house from scratch.
Sounds delicious. I want to change direction a little bit, and we've talked about community quite a bit, and you are so involved in the community and or business in a number of aspects. So tell me about, you're a board member for Hub of Bakersfield, kind of a downtown organization. Tell us about that.
So Andre Gonzalez, city councilman for Ward 2, he decided, it's been about 3 years now, that it would be great to get like-minded people together that really want to make a change and contribute to doing something that's more tangible within our urban core. And he handpicked, I think, 12 board members, and it was one of those people that he had chosen. And so it was kind of an honor, just that in itself.
Absolutely.
So
I get picked because I'm treasurer, by the way, right? It's not as big of an honor.
Manage
all
our
the time.
money, please.
Right.
Bring us more money and manage our money.
Right.
There's a give-get there. So to be a board member, you have to contribute as well. And right now, I'm a chair for the Innovation Lab, which is on the People's Committee. So we have some subcommittees within the nonprofit, and the People's Committee is responsible for the Innovation Lab.
Yeah, tell us about Innovation Lab.
So it's a 5-month program. We're in our 3rd year of it, and we do a cohort of, depending on the size this year, I think there's 14 innovators, and we teach them about tactical urbanism, and we connect them with people within the community that are stakeholders, and we give them opportunities to connect with people outside of their regular network of people.
Right.
And then we encourage a project. We require them to complete a project, and then we also encourage like smaller projects, like micro projects throughout the class. We started it off 3 weeks ago. And the first class, I've always dreamt of being a food tour guide. In like my perfect life, someday I'll be traveling.
What's that look like?
I'd like to create a retreat-based business and have maybe 5 different retreats set up throughout the world in different countries and connect community, kind of like what I've done here with Locale, but in other places. It would give me a good excuse to have a property there or a house someday in these countries, right?
Right? Yeah, based on food.
And then I think it would be neat to get students involved and create a program where they could kind of study abroad, but during the summer months, and give them something to participate in, to add to their resumes from like a worldly perspective. I think it would add value. And I'd like to also figure out ways to contribute to maybe do like a monthly themed donation, I guess you could say, or like a program that could give back to the arts with the restaurant, where every month maybe we have like a certain menu item. And if you come and buy that menu item, then 50% of the proceeds goes to creating a scholarship for somebody within the arts. And that could fund that program too, to send people abroad. Yeah. So in a perfect world, I would be a tour guide, a food tour guide.
A food tour guide.
And we did so for Bakersfield, for the Innovation Lab, for the first.
Heather, me too, but it'd be a bunch of greasy dives, by the way, right?
You can find balance in that. You could find balance in that.
Need to work on the balance.
They said that you shouldn't trust a skinny chef, but I 100% opposed to that.
Right.
Because I thought that I would gain a lot of weight owning a restaurant, and I worked my butt off, literally working my butt off.
You said you don't eat sandwiches, though.
I still eat, but I don't eat as much. And I thought that I would eat much more owning a restaurant, but because there's so many things that are happening
How can you
throughout my
not do
day,
that? You have to sample things to know what you're putting together.
I do. I sample things here and there. I'm huge
stick.
on taste, but I like to tell people I'm fat on the inside because I enjoy
I'd
food.
be a little fat kid. Man. I really would.
I'm on the inside, I eat all of the things, but for some reason I work so much that it just...
Oh, you're on your feet, right?
Yeah.
And so it helps the metabolism keep going. That's one of the things I liked about the restaurant industry was, I think being on your feet keeps your metabolism going, helps keep your mind running all the time.
Yeah.
I am that nerd accountant that sits in the chair.
That's hard.
And it is hard. I'm on my feet a lot.
But
I'm on the go a lot, but then I will see myself sit down in the chair, and I can feel that metabolism change just by doing that.
I was at ERA. I worked at ERA in the project management department for a little bit, and they had these treadmill workstations.
Yeah.
And I would go after lunch for 2 hours. I would remote into my computer, and I would work while I was walking, which was pretty impressive.
I couldn't do that at my job. I can barely do it standing.
It does take a level of multitasking.
Yeah. I can multitask. It's just the movement and everything that we do. So tell me about one other thing that you're doing is Restaurant Week board member. So tell me about that role.
Oh, so I wanted to finish too. So we did a food tour for our participants for our cohort of innovators.
Okay.
And so I was able to live that dream.
Downtown? Yes. Oh, wow.
So about 2 weeks ago, I had come up with the concept and I vetted 4 different restaurants. It was a mystery food tour. So they had no idea where they were going or what they were doing. And then I kind of gave them a little bit of a history behind each place when we got there, and then picked out things that they were known for. And talked about the Basque region and talked about our Hispanic culture, the base of our Hispanic culture, and how many things really we've been fortunate to make history in Bakersfield and in Kern County with a lot of our Mexican cuisine is tied to a huge Hispanic culture and to history in the making, really, which has been pretty impressive. So we touched on that. And then we went outside to Mill Creek and we did a little coffee tasting, and I brought in a local coffee vendor. And so it was really fun. It was the first ever Bakersfield food tour. So I was the guide, and it was nice. Check that off my bucket list. Yeah. So your other question was the Restaurant Week.
Yep.
So the visitors Bureau of Kern County. I think that's what their official title is.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. They had reached out and said they wanted to do a restaurant week like other cities do. And so I'm really excited. It's going to take place January 7th, the week of January 7th. We had a Zoom meeting the day before yesterday, and we started to think of a theme. And
So
maybe
what's that going to be? Tell us about what this.
it's in the starting phases. It's very, it hasn't been finalized yet.
Right. Developmental stage.
Developmental stages, yes. But I pitched a couple of ideas to do some kind of a competition within restaurants, because I think what makes Restaurant Week really unique to other cities is that those restaurants step up their game during that week and they bring out their like big guns.
Showcase, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it creates a little bit of a competitive edge.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of talk around it. And so I think in the past, with things that we've done in Bakersfield, we've been quick to say like, oh, well, what if this restaurant gives a discount? And I don't think it's necessarily about giving the patrons a discount. I think it's more about creating something that adds value.
Creating an experience, right?
Yes, an experience.
To showcase the best of that restaurant.
Yes.
Really, absolutely.
So I'm hoping that we can do some kind of a competitive theme where there's some kind of blanket theme, and then the restaurants would compete, and maybe even the patrons would vote on what they think the best of blah, blah, blah would be.
Yeah.
And so that's in the works.
That'd be fantastic for the community. It'd be a lot of fun. You know, one of the things about Bakersfield, some of the complaints that I hear is that we don't always have all the cultural events that you might find in San Francisco or in LA. But what I think we make up for that is some of the nonprofit things that we do, and then some of the events that we have that are things like Restaurant Week. And so we put some of our passion behind some of those things to make up for some of those other natural cultural aspects that we lack at
I
times.
think we have a lot of cultural aspects. I think that people just don't do the work to find the things that we have.
For sure.
We had the Greek festival last weekend, and I don't know if that was something that was widely known. You know what I mean? I think that even if you take the time to treat Bakersfield, this is my favorite thing to do, treat Bakersfield as if I was traveling to Bakersfield for the first time.
Yeah, sure.
So how...
Research it.
Yeah, like when I go to a city or a country or a new place, I'm literally taking 10 hours of my life and I'm dedicating it to seeking out the uniqueness of that space.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Find the best of what you would want to go do and experience while you're visiting there, right?
Yeah. And that takes a little bit of work. And so
I think we're guilty of getting in our natural routine that, just like I said, right? I mean, I live in Rosedale, and so, I have my little routine of the experience of where I go.
Yeah.
And I love the restaurants that I frequent. For the record, they're not that they're amazingly unique. I mean, but it's a great experience for me every single time that I go do it. I can rely upon it, and so that's what I tend to do. At the same time, if you told me that there was something downtown that's an experience, right, and that I get to go do that, we wouldn't hesitate to go do that.
And I think it is taking advantage or taking for granted things that are going to be there, right? I think this pandemic has really taught us a lot about, appreciating what we have and relying on community and unity and connecting with people, our neighbors, just building stronger bonds and connections and supporting each other. I think that has been a lesson that I've really taken from this whole experience, if you could call the pandemic an experience.
It was or is an experience, right?
Absolutely.
Still is.
Still is. But when I think of so the mural space that we have down behind the restaurant, it's a rotating art alley. And I think that it's playing off of that, right? So a lot of times something's there and you kind of take it for granted. So knowing that something isn't going to be there in 3 or 4 months, it changes the way that you think about it. And I think living in Bakersfield, knowing that you've been here your whole life, there's nothing pressing. There's not a sense of urgency to go to the hot springs for you.
If you think it's always going to be there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us more about Mural Alley, because we talked about that just briefly, and then you just said that word.
Yeah. So I had the ability to purchase the building that the restaurant resides in April of 2018. And the first thing that I wanted to do was to turn the backside of the building into a rotating art space, a public rotating art space, kind of like a museum. So the concept is, when you go to a museum, you don't see the same work every day or every time you go or every season. It changes out. That's the beauty of it. You're going to go, maybe the Mona Lisa is still going to be there. In certain museums, there's going to be that staple piece or award that is tribute to historical art. But for the most part, you're looking for inspiration and to experience something new. Yeah. And so
art travels.
Yes. And murals typically are, a lot of people don't view a mural that way. So traditionally, there's a mural that will go up in our community and it will stay there for 20 years until it's like peeling away.
Right.
And so I wanted to give as many people as possible an opportunity to contribute to a public piece of art space. And I figured now, 3.5 years in, I think we've had over 50 artists
Wow.
have an opportunity to showcase their work.
Wow.
And so it's cost me quite a bit of money. I'm still looking for sponsorship on it because
Right, I bet.
every time it changes out, it usually falls on me. And I have partnered with some local organizations to offset that a little bit here and there. But during the pandemic, right before it started, I decided to do a kindness mural. I did a little like a geometric black and white concept. And every time it changes out, there's a little bit of money involved, but I feel like it's worth it.
Do you still paint yourself?
Yeah, so I did that one myself.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fun. I felt like the community needed something like positive,
Right.
you know.
I know we've talked a lot about Locale Farm to Table and then a lot of other things. What have we left out? You lead such an active life. There's so many different directions that you go.
I think we left out we talked a little bit about the event coordinating and chic designs and my background in the arts. So I went to school originally for art and photography. I had a concentration in communications. And
Why are you not still doing art today? I mean,
I do. I still do. I mean, this is why it's funny with the restaurant side, because I could spend 16 hours a day working on that restaurant and still feel like I didn't get to check everything off my list every day. Yeah. And from a marketing standpoint, there's so many different hats that a business owner wears, regardless of the industry. It just happens to be in the restaurant industry. It's a little bit more intensified. I know there are other industries that are similar. So I try to make time, and I do find myself doing little challenges, like for a 30-day challenge or a 10-day challenge where I'll do some kind of a creative challenge and I'll showcase that on my Instagram page. And I just did this Inchy challenge last month and I went to Santa Fe on a creative conference, which was really fun. I love New Mexico. Santa Fe is one of my favorite places as well. But this woman had started this Inchy challenge, and it was just this small square piece of paper, and every day was a different theme. And so you were prompted to create something off of a word like wood or swirling, whatever the words were, boot. And so I try to do that just to kind of balance out my creativity. I know creating in a food environment still lends itself to creativity every day for me, but I also like to do tactical things and hands-on things and mess around with paint. And I just started doing some alcohol ink projects where you take rubbing alcohol and you take colored inks, and there's different ways that you can manipulate the ink to create a piece of art, basically.
Well, listen, I have to say this. I don't know how many podcasts I've done, but you have such a wide background and a varied background, and you're fascinating for the record.
Well, thank you.
I think Bakersfield has to come down to your restaurant to experience the restaurant side, right?
Yes.
And then some of the special events that you do. It sounds like such a fun time to be able to go do that. And then watch, obviously, they're going to want to follow you and your Instagram page. Things like Restaurant Week, is that going to show up on your Instagram at some point?
Yeah, so it will show up on our Instagram page as well. And if they do follow us, we're pretty active on Instagram and on Facebook. So I encourage them to give us a follow. And I'm working on a concept right now for an event at the end of the month where I'm thinking of doing like an interactive experience where there's a guy in India that takes flour and it's colored, and then he creates designs. And so I was thinking about, I'd like to do a play on like paint the plate, where you could, while you're waiting for your food or when you arrive to the event, maybe create a piece of temporary art at your table. So I've been working on some creative
temporary
takes on that.
Or permanent in some manner,
You
right?
could take a picture of it and you could always put it on a canvas or something like that later, but it would be something that you would do tableside to encourage creativity and interacting with a space. So
yeah, I wonder if there's a way to fire those. Like some places will do that, right?
yeah,
If
I
you
have
could
to
go,
look into it.
Yeah, if you could go do that and then have it fired so it becomes permanent from that perspective. So we always ask some personal questions, and I know we're going to have some fun with this because you're going to be honest. No, I don't think everybody else isn't completely honest, but you're what I call a person of impact. And I wouldn't say that about everybody, but I believe that about you. You're very actively involved in your community and business, and even though you are active, what is your heart telling you that you don't do enough of? So I'm
travel. I'm obsessed. I'm literally a travel junkie, and this pandemic has really it's been difficult for me because every year I've taken 2 international trips my whole life, like as far as back as I can remember, and it's been a goal that I set a long time ago. And so this has been really difficult. I get a lot of inspiration through connecting with people, and I still connect with people within our community. I love sitting on an airplane. It's one of my favorites. I actually want to someday do a challenge where I just for a month go somewhere different every 2 days and blog about it and just see who I encounter and like learn a little bit about myself. And it's not for everybody. Don't get me wrong. I'm that person who feeds off of energy of others and learning about new things. And so I think it would be really fun. But traveling would be something that I don't get to do.
I was
enough
trying
of.
the blank face that you were saying, looking at me, was trying to anticipate, like, where do I go for 2 days to every 2 days I go somewhere,
I mean,
right?
however the wind takes me, I feel like it would be, and what I have done, luckily for me, is I signed up for United for their rewards program, I don't know, 20 years ago, something crazy. And so I've been really adamant about flying on one of their affiliates or on them directly for that time frame.
Miles.
And so I've accrued quite a bit of miles. And with the restaurant, I usually...
Somebody needs to be your travel buddy.
And so I could feasibly do it without spending a ton of money. And it's really easy to travel with miles on a short term like that, where you can book a flight and it won't cost you that crazy much.
Gotcha. Along those lines of questions, so here's another one. One of the most significant life-changing events of your life?
So when I was younger, I had knee surgery. I used to be a cheerleader. I played field hockey, and I had knee surgery. And I thought I was the captain of the field hockey team. I was pretty athletic. My dad was very involved in sports and always taught me that it was important to stay involved in the athletic department in your school. And this was like a value that he had. And so that kind of shifted my mind, because I always thought that was something that I would do and I would always continue to do and work at that. And when I couldn't walk for 6 weeks, I was in a wheelchair for about a month, then crutches for about 3 weeks or so. And it was pretty substantial surgery. It really shifted my mind into thinking about other skill sets that I have and
for sure,
what would I spend my time doing. And so that was a pretty big shift for me.
Was that the start of the shift to the art side?
I was really fortunate. My mom and dad were both artists. So my dad plays the guitar. He's I always think I'm like a cool person. Like on my blog, I'll get, like 30,000 hits on something. And I'm like, Dad, he has like millions of hits on his YouTube channel. I think he has
Seriously?
like 1 million hits on one of his songs. And I'm like, oh, and he's so cute. He's like, oh, wow, Skip. He calls me Skippy. Skip for short, Skippy. Wow, I'm so proud of you. And then I see like randomly he has like 1.5 million hits on some song. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy. And my mom went to school for fashion design. And so my mom was really, really great at getting me involved in the arts at a really young age with gymnastics and dance and all types of forms of arts. Crafts, after school programs where there was it was heavy on the craft side. My brother and I got to pick 2 summer camps that we would participate in at the Museum of Art, and then 2 at the YMCA. And so I was fortunate enough to be exposed to the arts at a really young age.
It's awesome. Sounds like it was fun growing up. Last question. If the world were ending in a year, how would you spend your time?
It would be a tie with family and friends and traveling. I would want to travel with my family and friends.
Yeah, take everybody with you, right?
Yeah.
On food tours.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
Eat all the things.
Right.
And hang out with all the people I love.
If you're going to die in a year, we don't care what we weigh.
Yep. I would definitely go to Africa. That's been on my list for a long time. I'd love to go there before the world was ending, but I haven't had that opportunity yet. And Antarctica would be great. One of my goals in life is to visit every continent, and those are the 2 I haven't visited yet.
Got to get busy. No excuses, right?
Right.
Everybody wants to know how to be able to get a hold of you and reach you. So first of all, tell us where the restaurant is located for those people that don't know. Yeah. I know where it's at, but tell everybody where it's at.
We're at 1727 18th Street. We're on the corner of 18th and G, catty corner to the Padre, right across the street from the post office.
Yeah, exactly. Catty corner from kind of the old Greyhound station,
yep.
right? Right across the street from the post office.
Which the Greyhound station is going to be a luxury apartment complex soon. Did you hear about that?
I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Wow. They're going to bulldoze it and start over?
I've heard. That's what I've heard. It's supposed to be, I think, 4-story luxury apartment complex. A local business owner in Oil purchased the property as far as I know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that to happen. They bought it in July of the previous year, not this last July, but the July before. So
nice. Website for the restaurant.
Yep. It's localefarmtotable.com. Our Instagram is Locale Farm to Table, and so is our Facebook.
LOCALE.
Correct.
Right?
Local with an E. It's a topic of conversation as well. A lot of times people wonder where the name originated.
Yeah.
It was a play on words for local and destination. So locale by definition is your location.
Right.
And I wanted to play off of that community vibe when confuse people a little bit.
And so that you said that is your website, your Instagram page, and your Facebook page as
Correct.
well? Yeah,
Yes.
Everything is the same thing.
Yep.
It has been fantastic having you come in today. It really has. You do so many great things, and
Thank you.
and you're full of content, right? And so it's just amazing to be able to interview you today. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burden with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen, real estate lender, broker, and investor, and Eckroth, LLC, a sales and marketing agency. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or check us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe.